Good morning and welcome to Unusual Activity powered by Financial Juice. This is George Avedon
And
and
Milton
Milton
Mamonides.
Marmonides. Thank you for joining us this morning. As usual, we have a busy morning ahead. Lots going on in the overseas market, lots going on in the U.S. market, lots of news from the overnight. So we'll first just have a quick check on the S&P futures, currently down 5.75 at 1959. Excuse me, 1960, down 550, just ticked a bit. So let's get into what's happening in the marketplace. So yesterday, as a recap, Dow Jones finished down 0.25%. S&P's down 0.25% at 1977.80. Nasdaq finished down 0.14% at 4505.85. Certainly in the morning, yesterday we saw a risk-off trade in the morning. We did rebound in the late morning off of key support levels. Certainly resistance levels of 1980 were once again tested. Getting into some of the news from overseas, Hong Kong protests continue. Remember, this is a week-long national holiday in China. So various conversation about the impact of Hong Kong. For what we understand, the folks that we speak with, they don't think that that will spread from Hong Kong. But again, it just remains to be seen. It's a bit more complicated than typically what news is reporting. Remember, it's the Chinese government control over how Hong Kong elects their officials. So it's a bit complicated, but again, so far the protests are concentrating on mainly in Hong Kong during the national holiday. With respect to the Ukraine-Russian conflict, it does continue. There's some rumblings of ceasefire being questioned. There's some rebel attacks that are being reported. Remember, the sanctions are still in place, and should there be more rebel fighting, there is threat of more sanctions being placed on the Russian economy. How does that play into a little bit more of the geopolitics and so forth? So remember, yesterday we saw very interesting headlines coming out from the talk of capital controls. What if capital controls on behalf of Russia? They're debating about whether to limit the flow of money coming in, coming out of the Russian economy. So restrictions on outflows give policymakers some breathing space to address the shortcomings in their economies and ward off panic selling. We did see the Russian ruble compared to the U.S. dollar hit multi-year lows yesterday. In the unusual activity chat, we did bring up discussions of this notion of capital controls and the impact that this will have in on the Russian markets, investors in Russia, and so I think that that's going to, we feel it's going to continue to have an impact as these geopolitical news are coming through the wires. So a little bit of string of continuity here. We have the rebel fighting, we have the sanctions in response to the rebel fighting. What's the impact on the Russian economy? What's the impact on the U.S. dollar versus the ruble? Remember, the U.S. The energy and commodities. One of the things that we'll discuss today is the fact that commodities and energy prices are in the U.S. dollars. So as the Russian ruble goes down and compared to the U.S. dollar, it's more expensive to buy these commodity and energy. So, and of course, the possible capital controls. One other thing I want to bring up as in a quick discussion of yesterday's market melt, we did see that news impact the markets a bit, correct? When that talk of capital controls.
Yeah, George. I believe it was broadcasted pre-market through some of the main, news hubs. Within, I can probably think of on 30 minutes or so, they came out. Actually, the Russian, government came out and denied those rumors. So you have to be very delicate with whenever you get the headlines. You know, when that news headline came out, we saw the futures dip. It was like five, six, seven handles. Excuse me. And when the rebuttal came out, that's when the market reached back to its pre-market highs. So take everything with a grain of salt when it comes to overseas news. You never know what to believe or not to believe. So they always have huge impact, especially now in this delicate time on our U.S. markets.
No, that's a great point, and we always bring up this notion of the impact of a particular headline on not just macro markets. When we take a look at S&Ps and Dow, so but really perhaps even individual stocks as well. So just going through the euro-based PMI was lower than expected. UK manufacturing slow to its slowest pace in 17 months. PMI was 51.6 versus the prior 52.2. Still above that 54 expansion, but again, there is that growing concern, specifically in the European economies, on the impact of um, the slowing of the economic in the region, and that risk of quote unquote deflation, right? So on that, German manufacturing 49.9, lowest level in 15 months. What we're beginning to see, and we've been mentioning this for a few days now, is this: are we beginning to see a negative momentum? Are we beginning to see these string of numbers come in that will impact um, markets as a whole, economies as a whole, and the outlook for those economies? One of the things that we're picking up is the fact that producers are beginning to compensate for the lack of demand by consumers by lowering prices. Um, and so, this is on the heels of a weaker expected CPI in the euro area in September number. Um, so again, it puts a little bit of a bigger emphasis on Draghi as he speaks tomorrow. He will be speaking tomorrow in Naples. Certainly, everyone's watching what he will say versus certainly what he will do is important as well. But it's really the real concentration on what he will say. Um, Certainly deflationary worries. Also, we're anticipating global manufacturing PMI at 11 a.m. Uh, Moving forward into today, um, MBA mortgage applications were lower today by zero point 0.2, negative 0.2. Um, so again, that's a review of refi applications and purchase applications. Um, so it's an interesting number to watch. What impact it will have on the markets, we'll see. ADP employment report was at 8:15. We saw a 213 number higher than expected. Um, we're anticipating PMI manufacturing at 9:45. Institute of Supply Management Index at 10, construction spending at 10, and also EIA petroleum status. So one of the things to mention, so remember, Institute of Supply Management Index, construction spending, these are leading indicators. It will be interesting to see, especially on the PMI manufacturing. Um, are they also seeing will we be seeing the same type of information that's coming out of Europe, or are we going to see a little bit of a different tone taken in the U.S.? So again, that's a good thing to keep an eye out. One of the things that's critical as we said, in the petroleum. Excuse me. Let's come back to it just briefly. Is Before we go into this, is the petroleum numbers. Remember, one of the things that I want to bring up before we get into the overnight markets is this. We saw a massive drop in commodity energy prices yesterday. Oil hit, I believe it was close to 91, right, Milt? And that was a very fast drop. And remember, there is a strength in the U.S. dollar, correct? And that's something that we're monitoring very closely, and so should other traders, right, Milt?
Yeah, regarding that oil, George, really quickly, when we were going over our levels yesterday, we mentioned that one key number support on the oil was that 92.50, 95 numbers around. And as you can see, if you put up a an intraday chart on the CL futures, once that number was broken, it was like a hot knife through butter, just sliced right through down to like 91.30s, I believe it hit yesterday, 91.22.
I'm gonna bring that chart up right now.
So you can see that, you can understand that the levels have been important regarding market moves lately. We'll go over a quick. I'll just go over right now, actually, a quick levels that we discussed the past few days. On the ES, the futures, and first let me do the SPX, the S&P 5. We constantly mention that the 1980 number. It's been tested numerous times on the on the upside resistance. It was tested yesterday, hitting around 1985. Once it was tested, it was a quick test after the 1984 break. Quickly, it was dropped again near the lows. So it's a number to watch. It's a range number. It's a number that many hedge fund guys, many technical desks are watching. You want to see that number broken if you are a bull. You want to see that number broken with volume. You want to see the market moving on volume and with a strong burst right through that 1980 and a continuation through the 1982 resistance. Right now, we are sitting on, pre-market, we're sitting on support at the 1960 on the futures. So that is a number to watch. If this number is broken, our next number that we need to keep a close eye on is that 1956 on the ES. If that is broken, not once. If that is broken, we could easily see, the low 1940s, high 1930s. So keep those numbers in play. The key numbers on the upsides are 1980 on the ES futures, 1980 to 82, 83 on the SPX as resistance, and mark those numbers down. People have been trading off those numbers. The VIX, yet again yesterday, went back into the 1650s. We're going to watch that 17, 25, 1750 number, see if that is broken or tested again today. If it's broken, we want to make sure that it's a continuation break. If not, we want to move on with the fact that the number could be broken to the 14 levels. So keep those numbers intact, keep those numbers in play. If that is broken, we will surely make a note of it in the room. So like I said, the two numbers to watch on the VIX is 17 to 1750 on the upside, and then you got the 1450 as the support level. So you're probably range bound in those two numbers.
What's fascinating, you talk about the follow through on some of these levels. One of the things that we saw is a tick up in volume on that particular drop. We saw that drop happen, early in the morning. We had a come back to in the S&P futures to about that 78 level, and then right back down again towards the 1960, and then really towards the end we really had this spike up in volume. Now, and again, we'll discuss this in greater detail later, but certainly news of the Ebola issues, certainly that contributes to that slide,
Oh
correct?
yeah. Well, let me go over that Ebola real quickly for
And we'll go in greater detail in a little bit.
when when we yesterday after the close there was rumblings that we mentioned regarding a possible case in Dallas, Texas. After hours, like around I believe it was like around 4:30 or so, they came out and confirmed that case. So all the Ebola names. I'm sure George will go over all the Ebola names to watch to keep an eye on. That's going to be a key for the next, in my opinion, for the next 2 days. Case in point, look what happened with the wearable cameras in Ferguson. Ever since that came out, we had the DGLYs, the tasers, the ISN, everything was being popped. And when I mean popped, I was meaning 100, 200, 300% moves. So right now, the area and sector to keep a close eye on is anything in regards to Ebola. From the long side, short side, even in a market, a broad market view, many people even discussed as a black swan event that this could be something that could trigger that sell-off that so many bears have been expecting. It's something a lot of people are brushing it aside, but as investors and traders, we can't do that. We have to keep an eye on what's going on. There was a second case possible today. We have to keep an eye on what's going on because that will affect the way we trade these markets. Either it's trading individual names or trading in the market overall. George, I'm sure we're going to go over a quick list. I don't know if you
Sure.
want me to go through or you're going to.
Sure, no. So we can just jump into the Ebola topic, and then we'll review some of the overnight markets. One of the really interesting things of Ebola, really to keep an eye on, is one, it's the first case in the U.S. So it's clearly making headlines, right? So there's when you're trading these, we have the list up for you. TKMR, NNVC, BCRX, GSK, RPT, NLNK, INO, SRPT, HEB, APT, and NVC. Any of those names, any mention that these companies will be somewhat, even remotely of developing something for the treatment of Ebola, it will have, it'll have that headline. That headline will have an effect on these particular securities, in terms of even just the perception of looking at these stocks. The other, part Milton brought up is this black swan, right? It's this. We saw the black swan effect, during the financial crisis. Is this dovetail risk that nobody ever discusses. Or can't quantify. It's a difficult thing to quantify, right? What's the true effect of a Ebola outbreak in the U.S.? Lord forbid. But we have a second Ebola case possibility in Texas. So again, it seems that they're checking on some family members of Ebola, of that Ebola victim. The one thing to keep in mind is what other stocks that are not, biotechnology, maybe, to keep an eye on. For example, tourism stocks, right, Milt? You look at this morning at CCL, and it's down in pre-market. You look at, will this have an impact on airline stocks? Will this have an impact on anything to do with tourism, flights, various securities that the public, public places and so forth, right, Milt? I mean, thoughts on that? I mean, how does a trader go into this kind of situation, not really knowing, what the true implication of a single case, right? Let's put this in perspective. A single case of Ebola in Texas, right? How does a trader approach such a day like today?
Well, a trader approaches each day differently. Each trader is different. So right now, you're looking at what is in play, and right now, what in play is anything to do in regards with Ebola. Ebola is the headline on CNN. It's being the headline across all newspapers. Even though it is one case, the fact that it landed in the United States on the land, that's the issue. That's the problem. No one knows what could be, No one knows if one could be five, could be 10. So everyone is just throwing out ideas and decisions on what the possibilities are. You know, a few names. I'm just throw a few names at you guys for you guys to keep a close eye on. In regards to strict Ebola vaccine type plays, you're gonna watch TKMR. You're watching SRPT, NLNK, HEB, APT, BCRX, LAKE, and also NNVC. Those are the basic plays that are being mentioned and talked about through, news and forums and social medias. Those are the ones that are going to be some activity in. Also we can say we can watch, like George mentioned, the tourism type plays, airlines, cruise lines, anything in regards to where people will not be going in case something does happen with this whole Ebola thing. Another thing that we are mentioning, anything regards with the large gathering, clubs, gyms, as in fact CLUB, which is I believe it's New York Sports Club. That's another one where you keep a close eye on. So, like I said, even though this may blow over as a one or two case scenario, as traders and investors, we always have to keep an eye on the what ifs. And in the what ifs is, if something does happen, we want to make sure we can benefit. We know that we're here to make money, so we want to make sure we can benefit on the upside or downside on the market. So keep an eye on the specific names. Keep an eye on the overall market. Keep a close ear to what people are saying, and then you can make your picks on this whole Ebola case right now.
Thanks, Mel. So one of the things that and just to we always talk about technical analysis. Something that Milton, can a headline move a stock through a particular support resistance? My instinct is to say yes, correct?
George, I'll give you a perfect example. Yesterday, we were watching this Nuance, NUAN. Nuance, if you put up a daily chart, you can see it was trading right on support.
Let me get that up.
And yesterday, there was rumblings and news, headlines going through that Samsung was interested in either the parts or the whole company as a whole. As you can see, Nuance was basically bleeding throughout the day, and that headline alone saved it from cracking its support. So, it's funny to me how sometimes these happen in certain technical critical levels on certain names, but it happens, and it's something to always keep an eye on. Like I said, if you can see Nuance, that support level around the $15 is so critical, and it was literally breaking it down yesterday.
Correct.
And then, boom, out of nowhere, out of the blue, there was some headline overseas that says someone is interested in Nuance, and the stock propped and closed near the highs of the day, saving itself from collapsing off the support levels. So, like I said, anything could affect the name. People play it, people trade it, and if in regards to supports and resistance levels, a headline can easily save or destroy a name.
And that's a good point. This is one of the reasons that we not only concentrate on technical analysis, not only concentrate on global news and more domestic information. But what's absolutely critical is and important to a trader's day is understanding what potentially can move a particular stock or more macro indice. And as Milton said, take this Nuance, for example. We have a stock up here. In yesterday's trading, it was, again, precipitous decline over the last several days. You see this on the right-hand side. All of a sudden, you have this news coming out of, I believe it was Globes, right, Milt? It was Globes, and coming out and saying, there's, in discussions with Nuance, that alone propelled this particular security into another technical range, and just because there was a news headline. So again, technical analysis is critical. Numerical, quantitative information is critical, but also equally, we feel that is absolutely important is this value on having the right information at the right time. So I think that is really important, something to keep an eye on. And we'll go over a few examples from yesterday that we also saw how certain data, certain information impacts a particular security. What I'd like to do is just to revert back to the presentation on some of the overnight markets and what's happening in Europe. Asia was down 0.056%, 0.56%. Hang Seng still down again, negative 1.28. Remember, they are experiencing those protests. What we are hearing from our sources is that it's not going to spread. Again, it's just right now in Hong Kong, and it's a little bit more complicated than typically what for example, U.S. media are reporting. It has something to do with the way that they are electing their officials. We'll take a quick a check on the European markets. Bear with me one moment. So if we take a look in Europe, we are currently down. FTSE is down negative 0.79%. The CAC in Paris down 8.86%. The DAX in Germany down 0.48%. Just a quick check on the futures. We are down 4 at 1961.50. So again, that support of 1960s comes into play once again. So we'll, keeping an eye on that. Moving on to commodities, crude oil. Remember, yesterday was a really big day for a lot of commodities, a lot of distillates, energy stocks. Remember, the U.S. dollar, the DXY, which is the U.S. dollar at 85.92, multi-year highs here. So it's going to have an impact on commodity and energy prices. Remember, because they're denominated in the U.S. dollar, that's really something critical to take a look at. So crude oil currently 91.77, up 61 cents. Gasoline up 0.0172, heating oil up 0.0195, natural gas up 0.061. One of the things we have seen this decline, decline in metals. Gold at 1206.10, down 5.5. Silver continues its decline, 1697, down 9 cents. And copper at 370 cents, down 5 cents. Again, they're dollar denominated. The rise in the U.S. dollar will have an impact on it, and how whether it's overseas companies buying these raw materials, buying these precious metals. We're seeing, possible slowdown in the Chinese economies. What's that string of continuity that we're seeing clear across asset classes? So I think that's really important to monitor that. 10-year yield, we're currently at 2.45, a little bit lower than this morning. 30-year yield at 320. We do see a steeper yield curve towards the longer maturity. So again, something interesting to keep an eye out than it has been over the last month. Like to get into some of the top insider purchases this morning. Again, we always monitor top insider purchases. Critical. It's that bit of news that we don't usually see, so it is, we do consider it unusual for the particular security. So let's go over them. OMN CFO purchases 10,000 at $5.57. OMN average daily volume at 95,000. ARO director purchases $14,603.44. AMH CEO 4,000. Kin director purchases 100,000 shares. Kin typically trades 195,000 shares on an daily average. So again, that could be very interesting. Let's take a look at Kin, see what's if there's any currently in. We don't have any pre-market yet, movement yet at $9.35. So again, we'll want to keep an eye on that. DAKP director purchases 30,000 at $2.33. HCOM 10% owner purchased 25,000. CVEO multiple purchases. CVEO average daily volume is let's call it 1.5 million. And OPKCO purchases 25,000. Average daily volume on that is 2.3. So again, very important to really understand what impact that will have going into the trading day. So in our next slide here, you see, we discussed Ebola. If we take a look at TKMR, just quickly, it was up in post aftermarket trading last night. It's currently at 27.67. So we'll see if there's a continuation on that. Again, it's certainly important on the health side. It's important on the society side. And it's important on the trading side. So this is where the concern is on such a particular topic. Also, we eBay being downgraded by a number of analysts this morning on the back of PayPal, the news of the PayPal spinoff yesterday. Specifically, JP Morgan has a price target of $61. eBay currently at $55.15. Remember, Carl Icahn called it at the beginning of the year, right, Milt? And that's something that we always bring up too. The importance of understanding, we bring up insider purchases, but we also bring up really big stakeholders and their opinions on the particular security, and the really importance of that, right? We always want to monitor. That's important for a trader to really keep that in mind. So moving on, we have MAS, Masco upgraded price target to $28.50. MAS currently at $24.14. Let's see. Also, one of the things that we thought was interesting this morning was JP Morgan mentioning that there was just some uncertainty in the oil and gas markets. They feel that there are certain stocks that are able to sustain this, which are EOG, APC, NBL, XEC, PXD, PDCE. So again, we've seen this volatility in the commodity names and the energy names, and so just keep an eye on those stocks that will bear the brunt of this particular volatility. One of the things we want to bring up, Milt, is FNMA, right? So Fannie Mae. It's been in and out of news for quite some time, even with the crisis, right? So there was news yesterday about a potential lawsuit. When a trader hears something like this, right? How does one approach something like this when you have overnight news? Like let's say you have this in your portfolio. Yesterday's close was $2, call it 70 cents. You wake up in the morning and the stock is trading at the low of 97 cents, right? What's the thought process? What is a trader really, to keep calm and to really have a good head on their shoulders? How do they approach something like this?
Well, first you gotta relax, because when you wake up in the morning and one of your your stocks is down over 60%. We all know what we will all be thinking at that point. What the hell is going on? What are we doing? But you need to relax, take a step back. Sit back, evaluate the news, go with a clear head, and figure out what your solution is going to be. It's clearly it's a negative. We made numerous calls around desk regarding this news, and a lot of people are, on the fence about it. It's clearly, as every news is reciprocated in stock movement. So as we can see, the stock is down pretty big this morning. The only thing that you can do is you just got to take a step back, understand it, read it, and evaluate. If it's something where you believe that this is not what you expect or not what you want, you sometimes have to take the loss and move on to a new name. There's many other stocks out there that you can take that money and make it to work for a profit, or try to make some of that money back that was lost. But it's all on each individual person. Sometimes they want to hold for a long run, sometimes they want to be able to be out. So it's something to keep an eye on, something to watch, something to really understand the feel about what each name, like what each name, the end result of what each position is put on. Either it's a trade, a long-term investment, and sometimes a brick is thrown into that mix where it could change your opinion or your mind. So, like I always say, it's all on each individual trader, investor. You take the news, you digest it, and then you make a decision following that news. But you just got to take a step back and think to yourself, if I do take this loss, I can make my money working better in some other places.
Right.
So there's always a good solution to a bad result.
I think that's a great point. It's very very positive outlook on a potentially awkward situation. Again, we'll always bring up this proverbial headline risk, right? No stock is immune to headline risk, and I think that's really absolutely critical to that notion. A bit more on some biotechs. HSP receives FDA warning letter. HSP currently at not much. We're not getting yet any volatility based on that information, but again, keep an eye on that. Also, Nissan reports September U.S. sales growth 18.5%. One of the things, again, we a couple of days ago we had Ford discussing, their warning on what they're anticipating for the rest of the year. We had an upgrade out of for Toyota yesterday. We saw Nissan today with auto sales growth again. So uh, let's keep an eye on that particular auto sector, and specifically, with as these numbers are coming out for consumer sentiment and so forth. Let's see how that plays out. Where's that string of continuity for those particular figures? So one of the things that we'd also just a few things, a few pre-market upgrades and downgrades. Johnson and Johnson cut at Bernstein. Johnson and Johnson finished actually currently now at 105 and 85, 105.85. VPRT has been downgraded. Sorry, a little late on that. Uh, Closed the day yesterday at $54.79. SU upgrade uh, uh, finished the day at $36.15. DYN upgraded as well at we have that at finished at 28 around that $28.86. One of the things that we'd like to do is really get into. We had a few things going into unusual activity yesterday during the day, and we'd like to spend a little bit of time on it, and understanding why we feel certain information that we're seeing is absolutely critical to traders to understand, and the effect of that information on the particular security. So one of the things at 258 we detected an option play. It was FE, and it was November 31 puts. There was 8,100 contracts at 30 cents. So if we take a look at that, there was a 258. So I'm going to bring up the chart in just a moment. It basically resulted at one moment. it basically resulted the stock from about $33.67 to $33.46. So one of the things we'd like to get into is it was important to bring in this particular option contract into view, and the fact that it does have so Milt, let's talk about this a little bit. When a trader buys a particular put, they're bearish on the particular security, correct? So and when we see a big option play such as that, the intention that it will, at least for the short term, have an effect on the particular security, correct? And we saw that. We saw that decline, at least for, I would say, 1, 2, 3, at least a good 20-minute decline from the moment when we received that information as the security was coming in. When we see these particular option plays, how should a trader see this? When we post this into Unusual Activity chat, how should a trader see this? What should be their thought process? Certainly technical analysis. How do they approach this particular trade?
Well, each, like I always say, each person is different. People see it as an investment. People see it as a trade. We see it as a trader's mentality. Whenever a option look is thrown out there, it's because it's an unusual play. Initially, the move will be either if it's a put to the downside, a call to the upside. Why? Because people in the equity business think the people in the option business may know a little bit more than what they're seeing in the equity side of the trade. So they take that as either a positive on the call side or a negative on the put side. As we saw with the FE put, the stock basically dropped 15, 20 cents initially within minutes of the put being out there. As a day trader or a trader, you see that and you act immediately on a trade like that because it's the momentum of a downside call. So they see that, they trade it. It's something quick, in and out. With if you throw out a call look, maybe someone is buying out numerous calls. They want the upside move, so you would end up going long that equity. It's all on each person's decision making on what to get out of it, but the usual outcome would be either a short pop or a quick pop going into those option plays because they want to be a part of what the other person knows. So it's all like a game. It's like a game when you played in kindergarten. When you see somebody playing it, you want to go play it. When you see someone who buys a new bike, you want to buy that bike. When someone is buying all these calls, you think to yourself, either he knows something or he's got a good feel on it. You know what? I'm going to join the party, and I'm going to play it. So that's the mentality when it comes to large and unusual option plays. Either large sweeps, large puts. Large sweep calls, large sweep puts. It all depends on what you believe. Never decide on whatever other people do when you trade. But it's always good to piggyback once in a while. Just like many people piggyback on hedge fund managers when Carl Icahn makes a comment, or when Ray Dalio or Ackman makes a comment. People piggyback his trades. Sometimes it's smart to piggyback an option play just for a quick one. Not saying they're all going to work, but usually, it's a good trade here and there to make without worrying that I'm going to hold it for a long time. It's just a quick play.
That's a good thought, and let's spend a few minutes. It really, we brought up, so it was the FE November 31 puts, so it was a strike price of 31, and they bought 8,180 contracts at 30 cents. So what does that mean? So when you're buying a put, so let's spend just a little, maybe a minute on fundamentals of the option. So when you're buying an option contract, one option contract, you're buying the right to sell the security, 100 shares of the security at the strike price. So in this particular trade, why was it detected? It was detected because it was 8,180 contracts, so that's equivalent to 818,000 shares, right? So times 100, and you multiply by that by 0.3, so that's a 248 uh, $1,000 trade. So somebody's willing to bet that this stock will go lower by the expiration in November, right? So and they're anticipating that to go below 31. Okay, so that's the mentality, and having, as Milton said, piggybacking on this particular information, if you saw that you had the opportunity to participate in this particular downdraft for, let's call it, 15, 20 minutes. But again, you want to keep your thought process in place of your protection, right, Milt? Always keep that in place whenever you're trading this particular these kind of information, whether it's headline risk or I'm sorry, headline information or data information that's coming through. We'll go into the next one, but really have your levels in place, right? And that's something to keep an eye on. The next one we'd like to go into, and what you'll see is throughout the day, into Unusual Activity Chat, we are posting various information to do with unusual options activity, insider purchases, and various social media type information. So one of the things that in the slide, I won't show the slide, you saw the slide, I'm going to keep this on the chart just for a moment. At 2:01 in the afternoon yesterday, we saw the Citron research, right, in GoPro. Okay.
Yeah.
And that, so I'm just going to bring it up on the chart before we start, just to dissecting this a little bit. It also made an impact, correct? And that's something that's really critical for traders to monitor.
Well, of course, once that headline came out, it came out, I believe, in the afternoon around 2 o'clock.
2:01, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, initially, as you can see in the chart, once that headline came out, and people believe Citron, they've come out on numerous names that they believe are either frauds or they believe are actually decent investments, and they built a pretty good cult following because they've been correct on numerous names. So, they came out with a call that said that they believe that, every analyst, even we mentioned yesterday, how analysts just keep piggybacking other analysts because the stock goes higher or lower, as, it's like a game being played. Citron came out yesterday on a tweet, even said the fact that they believe that the only reason why analysts are upgrading and propping the stock is because of the stock price alone, not because of the fundamentals or exactly what the stock does. So it's, they came out, they popped that tweet, the stock immediately dropped from, I believe, like 93 something.
Correct.
To a low of about, $90.20.
Correct.
So the impact was, quick. You have to be in it very fast, and you have to be able to think to yourself, either you're going to trade it on their, information on that headline, be in and out quickly with this kind of name, or if you believe in what Citron says and believe in what what they represent, as they've done numerous times in the past and other names, you may want to either position this or move forward, buying a put or or even shorting it straight out. So like I said, many people take each person's or each comment differently, each news headline differently. Some may have just traded, some may have think to themselves, you know what, I may hold it for a little bit because they specifically said that they will short or they are going to or are short GPRO. So it's it's all on the individual. It's all on what you interpret the news headline to be. But as you can see, clearly news headlines are market moving, specifically for individual stocks. So it's something to keep an eye on, something to keep clear on, and something to always, look throughout the day with and understand before you put on a trader position.
I think that's a good point, Mill. If you take a look at this chart, specifically zooming in on this 2 o'clock hour here. So we saw this. Basically, for several minutes before that particular headline, maybe a little bit of lower price activity from a few minutes before that, and all of a sudden we have this news hitting that Citron reports, raising targets based on stock movements, as Milton said, not fundamentals. Opportunity for a short. So we saw this huge tick in volume. Again, we talk about volume a lot. We talk about that it's not just the movement, it's the movement in the volume that has to accompany this particular, whether it's a downdraft or a spike up in the security. We have to see that volume as well. So even if you take a look at came out at 201, within this first 5 minutes candlestick down, it was already down to $91.10. So clearly, um, headline risk, right? If you're holding a portfolio, uh, headline risk. It could be social media born. It could be any other indicators, but there's that risk, right? And you saw that a bit more coming down. So we saw that it hit a low of in that particular movement of $90.24, and then certainly had a little bit of retrace up to $92.20. But again, want to keep an eye on that type of news, especially if maybe you're not day trading these particular securities, maybe you're holding on to these particular securities in your portfolio. What effect does an option play have on the securities intraday? What effect does a particular information on from social media or any other source have on the particular security? And any other data feeds. So we're going to really provide as much information as we can during the day into the unusual activity chat that would be potentially market moving. So again, important to keep an eye on that. So as we're beginning to wrap up here, let's have a quick recheck of markets, where we are, where we're heading to. Let's see here. S&P futures down 4. We're at 1961 and 50 cents. 1961.50. We have crude oil up 74 cents at 91.90. Let's take a quick check on overnights into the European continent. We have FTSE down negative 0.74%. CAC is down 0.89. DAX down 41 cents. So again, a bit of a risk off. We're coming into this morning. And Milt, any closing ideas, thoughts? I mean, my thinking is, certainly global impact of how it impacted, certainly from yesterday, the dollar, where the dollar is, and impact on commodities and energy prices. We have the global news. Certainly, the Ebola thing, I think, was just going to be huge. What anything that you're taking away into coming into the open?
Just a very quick, all I can see is, it clearly feels that the market is, it's a little bit different than it was a few weeks ago, a month ago. The volatility is there. You're starting to see large moves in these markets. People don't even mention the fact that you have these companies like GDP, Goodrich Petroleum. You put up a yearly chart, they're down from, they're all kind of half. You sit back and you think the CVR, so many companies have been gotten destroyed. And people don't mention anything about it. The Russell, it's down 3, 4, 5% on the year right now. It's the mindset right now, in my opinion, has changed a tad to a little less compliant. We have QE ending next month. What could happen after that? Who knows? We've looked at charts where once QE ends, the market tends to sell off a tad. What happens this time around? It's your guess is as good as mine. But clearly the volatility has started to come back. We're getting 100-point moves in the Dow. The Nasdaq's moving 20, 30, 40 points up, down throughout the days. It's time. For a day trader, it's a lot of opportunity out there to trade, a lot of opportunity to make some great decisions, and sometimes even bad ones. But always, like we always say, we'll mention again, due diligence, do your work, do your trades. Either You make a good one, you make a bad one. If it's a bad trade, step back and turn the next one into a positive one. But the only thing I could say different from what I've seen lately is the volatility has certainly come back into this market. We can see it with the moves throughout the day. So it's a trader's paradise right now. So until the next thing happens, and it's either going to be a global news headline that could affect it, we just sit and wait and just enjoy the game.
Great. We thank you for listening. This has been Unusual Activity powered by Financial Juice. Thank you and happy hunting.